How is it going, everyone? It's K-Lumid here, and today we are going to be talking about Monsters vs. Aliens on the PlayStation 3. This is based off of the movie. I'm not really familiar with the movie, however, there was a cartoon that came out after the movie came out, and I do remember watching the cartoon quite a bit, so I'm familiar with that, but not so much with the movie. However, I will say, just judging this game based off of its gameplay and off of its own merits, it's actually a pretty fun little game, and it's actually a pretty decent length for a movie video game. Usually movie video games aren't this long, but this is about a 7-hour long game, or at least took me about 7 hours to play through it. And I enjoyed the majority of it. It's actually a really fun little action-adventure game. You get to play as multiple different characters that you see from the movie. You get to play as Bob, the little slime dude. You get to play as the missing link, who's the weird half-ape, half-fish looking thing. You also get to play as Ginormica. And I really like Ginormica's missions the best in this game, because she has these cool, like, on-rail style levels where you're basically, like, you can move left and right, but your character's constantly moving, so you're basically just trying to, like, dodge different items that are falling at you, dodge different hazards, jump over, gigantic abysses that lead to your doom. You're just trying to avoid hazards, basically. And I actually really liked her levels quite a bit. You can smash robots that are coming towards you. There's all sorts of this fun stuff to do. You can find shortcuts in her levels, which is pretty cool. And the whole time, you collect these little DNA fragments, and you can use these DNA fragments to upgrade your characters through this, like, DNA, basically, skill tree that you have going on. So that's pretty cool, too. And you can collect the DNA in every single level. You also play as the missing link, and his levels are more like kind of beat 'em up hack and slash levels. Lots of just beating up lots of alien robots coming at you, beating up alien clones, just doing a lot of beat 'em up action and a lot of really cool boss fights. So I actually enjoyed the boss fights in this game too, and a lot of the boss fights you're going to see involve the missing link, at least the most like involved ones where you're actually like having to dodge and stuff like that. There's some boss fights with the other characters, but they don't really feel as specialized when you're playing as the missing link, because the missing link is like the character that you have the most control over during the boss fights. So that was kind of interesting. I did enjoy playing as the character though. You can do a lot of different combos with him. You can do some pretty cool stuff when it comes to like reflecting rockets. You can use his tail and you can whip rockets back at where they came from, so that's pretty cool. And there's some I don't think they're really tough puzzles, but there's some like small puzzles that you can do where it requires you to like break certain items to open up force fields and stuff like that. So you have to kind of look to where the force field is being powered from, and if there's a turret, you have to destroy that turret to be able to open up the force field and stuff like that. So just kind of like small puzzles, but nothing too difficult. In fact, there's a lot of puzzles in this game, but none of them are very difficult, and they all tie into the action, so they don't break up the pacing either, which is pretty darn good. Then you have the Bob levels, and Bob's levels are kind of stealth levels. You can use stealth. There's a lot more puzzles in his levels. There's still some combat, don't get me wrong, but his is definitely kind of more just trying to figure out how to get around certain obstacles, trying to get through mazes, and trying to get through the areas without falling through grates and stuff like that, because Bob is literally just a blob. So if he goes onto a grate without anything solid in him, he'll just sink right through it and he'll fall off, and he'll just fall into oblivion. So you want to avoid doing that as Bob. So his levels are definitely more puzzle-oriented, and I actually really enjoyed his levels for the most part. There's some areas I wasn't a huge fan of, mainly towards the later half of the game where it gets way too heavy with the mazes. Like, they have you do like 4 mazes in a row, and it's just like, okay, that's enough. But still, I still enjoyed the majority of the levels in this game. That would probably be my one complaint about the level design in this game, though, is that a lot of the levels do start feeling the same, especially since in the DNA tree, whenever you're upgrading your characters, you also have to place some sections of certain levels again to kind of just, they're like little challenges that you have to do, and you have to do those to unlock more of the skill tree, and that just adds more and more repetitiveness, and that's not necessarily a great thing. It's not to the point where it's like unplayable because it's so repetitive, but it is something you're going to notice, and you're going to be like, okay, I kind of wish they would have done something else with the environment, kind of wish they would have done something else for the bonus missions, and it will just make you feel like that a little bit. But overall, this is a really fun game. Graphically, it looks really good, actually. I was kind of surprised with how good it looks. The cutscenes look good. I'm not talking about just the movie cutscenes, but the actual, like, in-game cutscenes also look pretty darn good. And it plays very well also. I never had any issues with its performance or anything like that. The only thing I will say is that you will definitely need a 6-axis controller for this, because there is some parts of this game that require motion controls, and without them, you're gonna have some problems. There's one specific like enemy that can freeze you. They have like a freeze gun that they can use, and if you get hit by that, you have to shake your controller. Well, if you're not using a 6-axis controller, then you basically just have to wait for something else to hit you and break you out of the ice. And then there's actually a boss fight later on, and you get sucked into the boss. And I don't know how you would do anything other than use a 6-axis controller, because it literally gives you a prompt to shake the controller on the screen during this one section of the boss fight. So I don't even know if you would be able to get past this level without it. So keep that in mind. You're probably going to want a 6-axis controller if you play this game, which, you know, I think that it kind of sucks because a lot of people use third-party controllers these days due to the fact that, I mean, a lot of the Sony controllers the batteries are dying in them, they're kind of getting hard to find, people are charging too much for them and stuff like that. So keep that in mind. You're probably going to want a 6-axis controller. I know that this game is available on other platforms, so if you want to avoid that, maybe try it on another platform. I hope that it's the same game on the other platforms, but just in case, you know, you may look into the other versions if you don't want to use the 6-axis controller. I didn't expect that. I was kind of surprised when I had to do that, but keep that in mind. You probably will want one of those controllers. I do think that this is a pretty fun game, though. I think it's surprisingly good. You know, I always hear people talk about movie games and talk about how movie games aren't good and stuff like that, but I gotta be honest, I enjoy a lot of movie games. I find a lot of these movie games to be really enjoyable, so I don't really know what people are talking about when they talk about bad movie games, but this is pretty enjoyable. It's another really fun movie game, and even though I haven't seen the movie, I still enjoyed this game, and so that definitely means that you'll probably enjoy this game even if you haven't seen the movie. So I say give this game a chance, especially if you can find it for a fair price. I've seen this game for $10 or less, so try to find it, try to check it out. I think it's pretty fun, and I think it's definitely worth your time. It's a nice little fun game with great voice acting and just great gameplay, and overall, it's a really fun experience, even though it's a bit repetitive. So go check out Monsters vs. Aliens on the PlayStation 3, and I'll talk to you in the next one. You have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.